What's up, everyone? It's December 28th, 2024. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be discussing the passing of famous sportscaster Greg Gumbel at the age of 78. Gumbel spent the vast majority of his national broadcasting career with CBS. Now, of course, CBS has one of the most blatant logos in the entire industry, connecting to secret societies. And the symbolism used here is the all-seeing eye. In fact, this has been in use since the 50s for CBS. Well, of course, on this channel, we take a look at the news through the lens of numerology, particularly the language of Gematria, which originates in the standard alphabetic order, but also branches off into other methods called the base 4, where the alphabetic order is either reversed or reduced. Notice how in the ordinal and reverse ciphers of Gematria, the word I equals 35 and 46. This is essentially the birthday of Greg Gumbel, who was born on the 3rd of May, which is written 3/5 in most parts of the world. And he was born in the year 46. A highly symbolic number to the all-seeing eye is 119. In fact, if you were to use the prime number cipher, which is the ordinal method, but with prime numbers associated, the word I on its own also equals 119. The name Gumbel, using capital letters, also gives us another 119. Later on in this video, I'm going to talk about how Greg Gumbel's passing is connected to the 9/11 attacks, or the 11th of September 11/9. Greg Gumbel was the broadcaster for the last game played at Foxborough Stadium, home of the New England Patriots. And it just so happens that the New England Patriots are the first NFL team to play after the news of the death of Greg Gumbel broke. News of this passing broke last night, and the very next game was played in New England for the NFL here on Saturday. In that final game at Foxborough, that was the Tuck Rule game. And Greg Gumbel was on the call for that game, and that was the game that eventually led to the Patriots dynasty. Furthermore, Greg Gumbel was the first African-American man to call play-by-play of a Super Bowl. And that Super Bowl was played in the year 2001. Which was the year of the 9/11 attacks. Also, this was a wood snake year on the Chinese calendar, which is coming up at the start of 2025 as well. But before we circle back to the 9/11 riddle, I want to talk about how this all connects to Kobe Bryant. Now, just yesterday, the same day we would later learn of Greg Gumbel's death, I made a video called Superstream 94, where I talked about how the Christmas Day plane crash, as well as the Bears getting their 666th loss, was all synced up to NBA superstar Kobe Bryant and his death in an air disaster back in 2020. Well, this is pretty alarming because Greg Gumbel's brother is named Bryant. So, yet again, I ask, what are the odds? I put Kobe Bryant on a thumbnail for a special video, and then later that same day, the brother of Bryant Gumbel passes away. Now, while Greg Gumbel was primarily known as a sportscaster, Bryant might be a little more well-known in the widespread mainstream media, as he's been a host of the Today Show, The Early Show, and also an HBO sports broadcast. The number 173 was brought up in that video, as this is the gematria of plane crash, Aktau, Kazakhstan, where it occurred, Azerbaijan, where the plane took off. And also the name Kobe has that 173. And then later that day, we learn about the death of Greg Gumbel, whose name equals 173. And he's a sportscaster. Sportscaster also with the 173 ordinal gematria. Now, the connections between Greg Gumbel and Kobe Bryant are actually quite vast. First, consider how the name Greg Gumbel sums to 688 in one of our mathematical ciphers that uses triangular numbers. Well, 688 was the Brown lunation number for the birth of Kobe Bryant. Paid members of the website have access to the lunation number, which is 688 for the birthday of Kobe Bryant. But of course, there's a lot more. And to kick this part off, let's take a look at the number in the news headline. Greg Gumbel has reportedly passed away from cancer at the age of 78. In the Sumerian methods of gematria, which is the alphabetic order times 6, notice how the word cancer equals 708. With the 0 dropped, this represents the number 78. 78 is also the year that Kobe Bryant was born. Now, Kobe's birthday is August 23rd, which you can write either 8/23 or 23/8. When Kobe died, Greg Gumbel was 8 months and 23 days after his birthday. And when Greg Gumbel died, he was 238 days after his own birthday. Kobe's helicopter crash occurred on January 26th, or the date 1/26. Well, today, the date that Greg's death is in the headlines, is 126 days before his next birthday. When you write out sportscaster Greg Gumbel, you get double gematria of 126 with the S exception and reverse reduction. Greg Gumbel was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and notice how the city of New Orleans also equals 126. More on New Orleans in a little bit. Well, measuring from Kobe's last birthday to the date of Greg Gumbel's death was 126 days. The sportscaster's death also fell 239 days before Bryant's next birthday. 239 is a prime number, the 52nd. And in the standard Pythagorean or reduction cipher, Greg Gumbel equals 52. In fact, Greg celebrated his last birthday on a date with 52 numerology. Now, before I go on and talk more about this cancer riddle, I just want to circle back to CBS, the all-seeing eye, because I do think this is relevant. When you measure from the founding of the CBS network, first of all, notice how this was 97 years ago. The name Greg Gumbel sums to 97 in the alphabetic order, and this is all connected to the Christmas Day plane crash. Plane crash also with the 97. But if you measure from the date that CBS first aired, well, on the radio technically, but to the passing of Greg Gumbel, you get this 3553. And I point this out because these are the ways you can write Greg Gumbel's birthday. 35 or 53. And of course, the word I has that 35. But let's look again at the gematria of Cancer. So I pointed out how it sums to 708, syncing up with his age, 78. But there's way more going on here. Kobe Bryant passed away at the age of 41 back in 2020. Now that stands out because the name Kobe Bryant equals 41 in reduction. In the ordinal method of Gematria, the number 41 sums to 118. So does the word cancer in reverse. Cancer is 118. Kobe Bryant was born 11,800 days even after Greg Gumbel. In Latin, the words death and homicide both equal 118. Latin, also known as Agrippa's key, what I consider to be the most significant large number cipher in this study, one I teach in every video. And the word cancer also has a lot of geometric overlap with the names Bryant, Greg, and Gumbel. So what happens when you measure between the birthdays of the Gumbel brothers, Greg and Bryant, the two nationally known media celebrities? These two brothers were born a span of 881 days apart. That's the 152nd prime number. And now Greg has died from cancer, which equals 152 in standard Gematria. The standard method, constructed similarly to Latin but uses the current 26-letter English alphabet. But notice how cancer also connects to the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl equals 1520. This upcoming Super Bowl falls 15 years and 2 days after Super Bowl 44. Now, why am I making this measurement here? Well, before I pointed out how Greg Gumbel was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and he was the first black man to ever commentate a Super Bowl. Well, this next Super Bowl, coming up in February, takes place in the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. What another coinkydink. Now, the team that plays in New Orleans, the New Orleans Saints of the NFL, they happened to win Super Bowl 44. And this brings us to the next big connection here. Again, these two Super Bowls, 15 years, 2 days apart, connecting to the big cancer riddle. So check this out. As mentioned, the Saints were winners in Super Bowl 44. Greg Gumbel died of cancer 4 months and 4 days after Kobe Bryant's birthday. And in the alphabetic order, cancer equals 44. The name Gumbel sums to 404 in one of the other mathematical methods. And measuring from the death of Greg Gumbel to Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, his hometown, he died 44 days before the game. Of course, 44 has matching gematria with New Orleans and the word cancer, all 144. This is always important because the date 4/4, April 4th, also has this 144 connection. But what really blew me away about this is the extended methods. Check this out. Sportscaster Greg Gumbel, the same phrase we wrote out earlier to get that special 126. Sportscaster Greg Gumbel equals 1512 in standard gematria. That's the same gematria in the same method as the number 44 when you spell it out. 1,512. Notice how the number 44 has a Latin gematria of 972. Well, the 972 is found in Kobe Bryant's age for Super Bowl 59 in February. Now, real quickly, to wrap this part of the decode up, I just want to mention how this is part of an Eclipse code. And I've talked about this like with Jackie Robinson, for instance. Remember, the first black man to play Major League Baseball in a white league. Well, similarly, although on a less historic note, Greg Gumbel was the first black man to call a Super Bowl. an industry normally dominated by white announcers up until that time. Well, notice how the name Gumbel equals 60. And the number 60 is significant to African Americans. Now, if you write out the N-word as it's spelled, which YouTube and other parts of the internet have actually made me too nervous to say at this point in my life, but when you write out the N-word as it's spelled, it actually has gematria of 60, just like the name Gumbel. And Greg Gumbel died 408 days before Super Bowl 60. Now, this is interesting, the 408, because Gumbel's nickname was Gumby, which sums to 408 in that Sumerian cipher. But earlier this year, 408, or April 8th, was the date of the Great American Total Solar Eclipse. And how interesting is it that Gumbel died of cancer 264 days after the eclipse, when in Gematria, both Gumbel and cancer equal 264. Now, I don't always look for eclipse connections, but sometimes the numbers force you to it. And the reason I got there is because look at what happens when you measure between the birthdays of Bryant Gumbel and Kobe Bryant. They were born exactly 1,560 weeks, which is also equivalent to 10,920 days. And these are both important eclipse numbers. Whether you look at Hebrew or the Latin ciphers, the word for eclipse equals 156 and 192. So there's a couple of more finds in the blog post that's linked down below in the description. But what I want to do actually is take a look at something else I discovered. And my buddy Adam was pointing this out in the chat during my live stream yesterday, but I just have to mention this. In light of the video I made yesterday, talking about Kobe Bryant and his 666th game, where he scored a whopping 81 points, and how it was connected to the Bears losing their 666th game. The main crux of that riddle is that the next All-Star game after Kobe's death was played in Chicago, and that's where they awarded the first ever Kobe Bryant trophy. Well, in regards to all this 666 talk with Chicago, I forgot to mention during that video that the city of Chicago, Illinois, is home to the 60606 zip code. In fact, this is right around the place where Route 66 begins. Now, in 2023, I made a similar blog post after the Pittsburgh Steelers won their 666th game in franchise history. And the Bears lost their 666th exactly 60 weeks later. And 666 equals 60. So this was all very strong, very powerful decode here, but what I didn't realize is that earlier this year, in August of 2024, the baseball team from Chicago, the Chicago Cubs, defeated the Pittsburgh Pirates to push their record to 66-66. And remember how the Chicago Cubs, I think it was like a 6-6 tie going into extra innings against the Cleveland Indians in the year 2016? And the number 216 is 6 times 6 times 6. So what I thought is like, okay, I'm sure this Cubs game is connected to the Bears and their 666 riddle. And check out the winning pitcher for that game for the Cubs, Jameson Taillon. I think how you pronounce it. His name equals 1056, which syncs to 666 and Chicago, Illinois. In Latin, 666 equals 1197. And this pitcher was 11,970 days old for this game. This game was also exactly 4 years and 7 months after Kobe died. And think about how the 666 is the number of the beast, which equals 47. Next month, Donald Trump becomes the 47th president, exactly 666 months after the first moon landing. And don't you think it's a rather unusual score that the Cubs defeated the Pirates by? And again, this is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like how I mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers winning their 666 game. Anyway, the game finished with a score of 18-8. And remember how Seahawks cornerback Kobe Bryant made the play, pressuring Caleb Williams in the final play against the Seahawks in their 666th loss. So there's some more interesting alignments. I'll go ahead and link this blog post down in the description below. But as always, you can go there yourself with some of the links and find a bevy of work in numerology. And for those of you who don't have my blog bookmarked, definitely feel free to do so, because not only will you get access to some of the knowledge I'm sharing before I go on YouTube, but there's also a lot of posts on here that I don't end up talking about in a video. So make sure you have that marked. And yeah, check this one out especially, because, man, this number of the beast riddle is super powerful and has been certainly all the rage here this week. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're watching live or archived. I appreciate likes, subscriptions, shares, as we really got to rely on the community to spread the word with this type of information. All right, guys. Peace, love, God bless. We'll talk to y'all next time. See ya.